Well, there has been quite the theme today around, of course, what is happening with our climate, with, of course, the carbon budgets released from the Climate Commission yesterday. And you would have heard earlier in the show, Graham speaking to us there from Fire and Emergency, saying that 2020 was one of the worst years he's experienced in his career with wildfires. Is this a trend that could continue with hot weather across the North Island, contributing to a brink of drought in Northland and peaking spore levels, of course, indicating facial eczema being a big threat, continuing as we're going into autumn. Joining us now to try and bring some peace to the anxiety many farmers and orchardists may be feeling at the moment in parts of the country is our resident rural weather commentator from Rural Weather, Phil Duncan. Phil, that, as predicted by yourself, rain across the top of the country never came to anything.
No, it's disappointing. Right now we've got three tropical storms north of New Zealand. In fact, early on Monday morning, we had the rare moment where they were all named tropical cyclones. Very rare to have three. Sometimes you get two, but to have three in a fairly small space, that's unusual. And so everyone's thinking, well, this is good. Here's the La Nina cyclones, here's the rain. But we've got this stubborn area of high pressure over New Zealand. It's been around, not the same high, obviously, but we've seen a lot of high pressure around for 2 years now, if not longer. And so it's becoming almost sort of the default forecast that when you see a cyclone, the high is going to stop it from getting here. And that certainly seems to be the case with these three storms at the moment. All three of them look as though they're not going to reach New Zealand with more of that dry weather lingering, and that's obviously not good for for bushfires, forest fires, scrub fires.
Yeah, and so, and that's the thing is, in parts of the country in Northern and Hawke's Bay that last year was in severe drought, they never really had enough moisture to bounce back any of those water table levels and soil moisture at all. And so the hope is that the prolongedness wouldn't be similar this year. Is there any prediction that you can give around that?
So, yeah, rainfall, like I say, it's looking very dry because of this big block of high pressure we've got over the country. In the tropics, these three areas of low pressure north of New Zealand are part of La Nina. They're part of what we call the monsoon trough, monsoon rain. Big long line of cloud that's up in the tropics, and it just drops thunderstorms nonstop at this time of the year. But this is the 2-week map, and for those who are listening, it is very dry over New Zealand. In fact, Central Australia, the desert, Alice Springs, and Central New Zealand look quite similar on the map with just a few millimetres of rain. Areas like Hawke's Bay maybe getting 30 or 40 millimetres, and that's as these cyclones come down the east of New Zealand. The easterly flow brings in a few showers. So that'll be welcome and helpful. But this is 2 weeks worth of rain that we're showing on this map. And for those who are listening, it is not much. Places like Southland seeing 10 to 15 millimetres, although I guarantee we're not going to get a complaint from anyone in Southland about that forecast. But it's central areas, western parts, Waikato, for example, might be in that same boat of seeing just 10 millimetres in the next 14 days. So a lot of northern New Zealand is going to dry out quite a bit in the next wee while.
And we're speaking there around the high risk of facial eczema from an increase in spores, and an article on Farmers Weekly says that the highest detection rates for this time of year over the past 4 years. And of course it's connected a lot to the humidity levels as well, Phil. Are we seeing any trend of that going down in the north?
Not at this stage, although one of the positives is that because we're not having a lot of rainfall, that should keep those spore counts a little bit lower. If you go to the newly upgraded ruralweather.co.nz website, scroll halfway down the page and you'll see a section called Daily Data. And when you click on that tab, it opens up all the different sort of layers of weather that you've got, from cloud cover, UV index, rainfall. We've also got humidity. So you can see every hour what your humidity levels are doing. But if you wanted to take a look at long range, you can go to the temperature section at the top of the page, and that will show humidity levels off and on this map here, it's showing them look like dorsal fins every night, and that's when the sun goes down, the humidity jumps up. So we're seeing at the moment dew in the morning getting heavier and heavier, but the sun during the day then burns it all off. So at the moment, yes, the humidity levels are going up a lot in the evenings, but at this stage during the day, the humidity index, we've got a humidex in here, the red line, that basically is what the temperature feels like with humidity. And at the moment, it's not too bad. It's getting up around 30 degrees on this example from Morrinsville and Waikato. That's fairly high, but it's not too bad. It was 40 degrees or so about a week or two ago.
There was a lot of comments down here when it was sort of peaking around that 40 degrees in Canterbury that, it was bearable because there was a lack of humidity in the south, and it really brought home how different the two islands certainly can be. And, of course, some stormy, rainy weather down south as well, being a bit of a bleak summer for Southland and Otago. So they are after some sunshine hours to certainly spark some growth. Obviously there's a lot of grass around, and the demand for mouths to service it. But it just being able to dry out some paddocks, is that on the forecast?
It is. It's looking a lot better at the moment. They'll still have a few showers in Southland. There'll still be the Southern Ocean's very, very stormy this year. But this new high pressure belt that's coming in is more southern focused. It's going to allow a bit of an easterly flow in northern New Zealand, and for Southland itself, much drier, much sunnier, and a bit warmer than it's been. So I think real summer is now coming in for Southland. Make the most of it. And in fact, when we go into March, Southland quite often has a good March because the westerlies kick back in, and you get a lot of west to northwest winds. Fiordland National Park blocks a lot of that wet weather from coming in. So I'm trying to be optimistic that we'll get a bit of some good weather in there, but certainly the next week ahead is a lot more outdoorsy than it's been for the last couple of weeks.
And let's touch on with the detail that ruralweather.co.nz goes into, Phil. One thing that it's all well and good having hot weather, but when you get those hot winds, they are obviously what is really driving people batty and drying things out around the country. What is really creating that and on the forecast for the next couple of weeks?
So a lot of high pressure around New Zealand for the next couple of weeks means the winds will be much lighter. We will see a bit of an easterly flow kicking into the upper North Island as a result of the high pressure belts further down the country and some of the lows in the tropics. And you'll probably feel that easterly kicking in over the next week, probably this weekend coming in. But between now and then, much calmer than it's been, lighter winds in both islands. There'll be the odd day where the winds pick up. Certainly the coastal breezes will be picking up here and there, but nothing too stormy. None of those big westerly events that can really dry things out very, very fast. So hopefully the next week or two will be that sort of ideal peak summer, calm weather, but I do expect things to become a little more unsettled as we go into the middle of the month. And by the way, another tropical cyclone also forecast for Fiji next week. They're having a bad run of these flooding type sort of lows, but this next one next week might have perhaps a slightly better chance of reaching New Zealand. But as I said at the beginning of the program, the default setting is that the highs are beating the lows at the moment, and until that changes, I don't expect a sudden dramatic change in our weather pattern.
And what a time to release a Climate Change Commission draft report on climate change, Phil, when there's so many extreme weather events going on at the moment. What's your thoughts briefly on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for New Zealand to discuss in this area. I love the idea that some of I saw from Dairy, I think it was Dairy NZ last week, talking about, everybody having their own sort of carbon footprint so that we all individually know what we're doing. I think that's a really cool idea because that brings urban and rural people together into one sort of common thing that we can all sort of understand. So I think there's some cool areas. New Zealand, climate change is a weird thing for us. We've got a lot of natural, rainwater, a lot of good natural resources. We can see quite a few positives coming out of climate change for the farming and growing sectors, a lot of challenges as well. But I think the more that we try and keep our own backyard clean and green, the better it is for all of us, including business. I mean, if we're seen as we are at the moment as the COVID-free country on this planet, as best as we can do, how awesome would that be to have the clean and green thing attached to it as well? It only helps our industry.
Thank you so much for that, Phil. Of course, your in-depth, long-range rural weather forecast at ruralweather.co.nz, and I certainly enjoy getting my daily updates from there on what is going on in my local area.